Surrounded by stunning countryside and rich with over 1,000 years of history, Bury St Edmunds, often just called Bury, is home to more than 40,000 residents. It's also famous for being the historic birthplace of St Edmund, England's first patron saint. With such a deep-rooted past, it's no surprise that this town has its fair share of ghostly legends. In this video, we're going to dive into some of those eerie stories. The Abbey of St Edmund, founded in 1020 as a Benedictine monastery, was far from just a small parish. For centuries, it stood as one of the most magnificent monasteries in all of England. People came from all corners of the country to pay their respects at the shrine of the martyred king that was housed there. Kings and nobles made visits, wealth flowed into its coffers, and the monks moved through these grounds with both authority and devotion. But everything changed in 1539 when Henry VIII's Reformation dismantled this once great institution. The shrine was destroyed, treasures were stripped away, and the monks were forced out. The abbey fell into disrepair and ruin. Yet, even as the stones began to crumble, some believe that the spirits of those devoted monks still linger in the place they dedicated their lives to. Their presence is said to echo through what remains of this historic site, keeping its legacy alive in a way that transcends time. When people stroll through the ruins at night, they often share stories about shadowy cloaked figures gliding among the ruins of the abbey. These mysterious apparitions seem to appear for just a brief moment before disappearing into the very walls themselves. Others have reported hearing soft echoes of chanting drifting up from the grass, as if a long-forgotten service is still taking place, led by voices that have long since faded away. It's as if the abbey itself holds on to these sounds within its crumbling stones, capturing whispers and footsteps that ring out clearly when no one else is around. The atmosphere here feels alive with history, inviting those who wander close enough to listen carefully. Some eerie stories come from the cathedral cottages, which are nestled right within the ruins. Back in the 1960s, a woman living in one of these homes experienced something quite unsettling. More than once, she woke up to find a monk standing in her bedroom, a tall figure draped in a hooded robe. He would glide across the room and settle at the foot of her bed. It was strange. His presence felt so natural, as if he belonged there and she was the one intruding. She wasn't alone in this experience. Others living in the cottages reported similar encounters with this silent figure appearing in their rooms as well. Even today, people living near the ruins often talk about strange experiences. They mention cold drafts and sudden chills in the air. There's also that peculiar sensation, like being watched by unseen eyes. Visitors have shared that if you stand very still, you might feel something gently brush against your arm, or even hear a soft murmur of prayer coming from the stones. It's as if the past is whispering to those who are willing to listen. Now let's travel back to 1961. No mobile phones, no internet, black and white televisions. Two friends making their way home down Angel Lane, walking along, minding their own business, happily chatting. When they saw a figure ahead of them, nothing strange in that you may think, but what was ahead of them looked like a monk. It wore a robe and was hooded, just gliding along the street. Not really the sort of thing you would expect to see. They watched in complete silence as the figure went straight through a stone wall and vanished. Both men looked at each other, then took to their heels and ran. To this day, they still swear on what they saw. The figure of the monk was as clear as looking at someone else. Only a year later, in 1962, another sighting came from nearby Churchgate Street. This time it was described as a monk hovering above the ground, his robes hanging as though caught in a breeze. He glided forward a short distance, then simply faded into the night. Over the years, there have been countless reports about a mysterious figure in a hooded robe wandering the same streets. People often say that the monks who once roamed the abbey's cloisters now spill into the surrounding lanes, reluctant to leave behind the places they cherished. For them, these streets might still feel like an extension of their monastery, and they move through them as if time hasn't changed anything. Even today, those who take a shortcut down Angel Lane after dark share eerie experiences. Some claim they feel like they're being watched, while others notice an unsettling chill in the air. A few even admit they quicken their pace without really knowing why. It's one of those places that makes you instinctively walk faster, your heart racing just a bit more, as if someone is right behind you. And every now and then, when you glance back, you might just catch a glimpse of what looks like a robe slipping around the corner. There's something hauntingly captivating about it all, an air of mystery that keeps people on edge and intrigued. Now we move on to Abbeygate Street, which just looks and feels like any other street. That is until night falls. For decades, shopkeepers and families have spoken about ghostly monks, poltergeist tricks, and a presence that moves through walls as if the buildings themselves were no barrier. In the early 1970s, one family living on the street had endured years of strange happenings. Between 1972 and 1976, they reported sounds of chanting echoing through their rooms at night, even though no church was nearby. Water taps turned themselves on. Chairs shifted on their own. Balls of glowing light passed straight through walls. It was as if the Abbey's ruined energy had spilled into their home, filling the rooms with restless energy. The family swore these events were real, and though neighbours sometimes dismissed it, those who visited often left unsettled, convinced something unseen lived there. But it wasn't only private homes. Shops along Abbeygate Street have long been touched by the same haunting. In October of 1975, a staff member at a clothing shop called Annabelle's Togs saw a figure appear right before her eyes. A monk, his hood pulled up, drifting across the shop floor. She stood frozen as he walked calmly toward the wall and passed straight through, vanishing into solid stone. Others working there spoke of hearing footsteps in the storeroom when no one else was inside. That same year, hairdresser Dennis Taylor, who worked just down the street, reported cold spots and sudden feelings of dread in his shop. He wasn't alone. Different shopkeepers at different times told almost the same story. Objects falling without reason, sudden drops in temperature, and the feeling of unseen figures brushing past them. It was as if the monks who once walked the Abbey cloisters now wandered freely along Abbeygate, moving in and out of shops and homes. The activity didn't end with the 1970s. Even in more recent years, staff in basements along Abbeygate have described the same unnerving chill and the same strange noises. By day, Abbeygate Street is bustling, cheerful, full of chatter and trade. But when the shutters close, it becomes something else entirely. Fancy a trip to one of the smallest pubs in the country? Maybe not. After you hear what happens there, you will change your mind. The Nutshell Pub, a 400-year-old building trading as a pub since 1867. By day, it's a cozy curiosity for tourists and locals who squeeze inside for a pint, often shoulder to shoulder. But after dark, when the last glass is put away, this tiny pub becomes something far stranger. For within its cramped walls, several ghosts are said to linger. The most told story speaks of a child. Long ago, a young boy is believed to have died within these walls, some say by violent means. Since then, staff and customers alike have reported the sound of small footsteps running across the floor when no child is there. Glasses have been known to shatter suddenly, as if knocked from unseen hands. On quiet nights, voices have drifted through the air, high-pitched and playful, like a child laughing from somewhere in the building. Yet when the pub is checked, there's nothing to be found. There is also talk of a monk who appears from time to time, slipping into the small pub as though it were just another stop along his endless walk through the town. People have described him as a tall, hooded figure, watching from the corner before fading away. Some say he's linked to the Abbey ruins just up the road, his spirit unable to stay in one place, wandering into pubs and homes as easily as he once strolled through the Abbey. The strangest apparition, though, is that of a cloaked figure wearing a tricorn hat. More than once, people outside the Nutshell have looked up at the upstairs window to see a man standing there, staring down at the street. His outline is clear, his clothing distinct, but when the upstairs is checked, it's empty. One former landlord swore he saw the figure with his own eyes, and others have backed his claim over the years. The pub carries other odd signs too. Visitors often remark on sudden scents of strong perfume that suddenly appear and vanish again, even when no one nearby is wearing any. Staff have complained of batteries draining from their phones in minutes, as though some unseen presence feeds off the energy inside. Looming over it all is the sight of a mummified cat displayed above the bar. Cats were once sealed into buildings to ward off evil spirits, but whether this one holds the ghost back or traps them within, no one can truly say. The dried body of the black cat on display in the pub was discovered in 1935 during building work. The nutshell may be small, but its hauntings make it feel something else. Moyse's Hall has stood proudly in Bury St Edmunds for over 900 years and is easily one location that has had more than its fair share of spookiness over the centuries. A museum is housed within the Grade 1 listed building that was originally built around 1180. It's believed that it was once a Jewish merchant's house, a workhouse, a police station, and a jail. And with a history like that, it's also said to be haunted. A man called William Corder is said to haunt the museum, more commonly referred to as the Red Barn Murderer, who was hanged on the site back in 1828. He was found guilty of murdering his lover Maria Martin and fleeing the scene in nearby Polstead. He had continually kept up the pretense that Maria was very much alive and well. The young girl's remains were eventually discovered in a shallow grave in the Red Barn, then a local landmark. After her stepmother recounted a vivid dream in which her stepdaughter had been brutally murdered within this very location. William Corder was hanged in Bury St Edmunds. And would you believe that a book on display in the museum is bound by his actual skin? There's lots of creepy and spooky stuff on display in the museum's crime and punishment gallery alone. As well as both the scalp of William Corder and a book bound in his skin, you'll also find the tavern clock, which has a list of executions along its side. An actual gibbet cage, which, when originally discovered in the 1930s, which still had a skeleton inside it, and mummified cats. The mummified cats are part of a really interesting exhibition about witchcraft, superstition, and Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General. Whether Carter's ghost is truly at rest or still wanders the hallways of Moyse's Hall, we may never truly know. The ruins of St Saviour's Hospital still stand, a reminder of the medieval leper hospital that once stood here. For generations, this place housed the sick and the outcast, those hidden away from the world. The walls have long since crumbled, but the energy of sorrow and loss seems to hang over the site. And as you'll see, ghosts do not care whether the world builds new walls on top of the old. The Grey Lady, that most famous of Bury's spirits, is said to drift here from time to time. Witnesses through the 20th century described seeing her pale form among the ruins, gliding silently through the broken stones before fading into nothing. Some connect her with the lepers once housed here, a woman who came to comfort them, only to remain bound to their suffering long after death. Yet it is not only the ruins that seem haunted. In the 2000s, staff at the Tesco store built beside the old hospital began to report strange disturbances in their canteen. Plates shifted on their own. Objects fell from shelves when no one was nearby. Some even spoke of shadows moving across the walls, though the room was empty. One worker admitted he refused to eat there at night, too unnerved by the sudden drops in temperature and the sense of being watched. It seemed the old energy of the hospital had seeped into the walls of the modern supermarket, refusing to be buried by bricks and fluorescent lights. Stand by the ruins at night, and the streetlights appear to dim, their glow swallowed by the darkness around the hospital grounds. Step inside the Tesco canteen alone after hours, and the hum of the refrigerators feels almost deafening, as though the silence beneath it wants to push through. It is a reminder that in Bury St Edmunds, history never really stays buried. It lingers in the ground, seeps into the air, and makes its presence known in the most ordinary places. We now enter the shadow of the cathedral to the Great Churchyard. By day, this is a peaceful place, rows of gravestones, paths winding between trees, and the quiet hum of the town just beyond the walls. But once night falls, the churchyard changes. The silence changes, and the stones seem to draw closer. It is here, more than anywhere else in Bury St Edmunds, that the Grey Lady is said to appear. She has been sighted across the town, drifting through Abbeygate Street, gliding near St Saviour's ruins, even slipping into shops and basements. But the churchyard is her home ground. Witnesses claim she walks here most often on 24th of February at 11 o'clock at night. On that date, in the dark, she is seen moving slowly among the graves, her grey form glowing faintly. She does not look at those who see her. She simply walks silently until she vanishes into the stones, or vanishes into the darkness. Who is the Grey Lady? No one can say for certain. Some believe she was Maud Carew, a nun caught in scandal during the 1400s, whose sorrow anchored her to this place. Others insist she was a woman connected to the Abbey, bound here by love or betrayal. What remains clear is that her presence has been reported for centuries, her pale figure gliding through Bury's heart with the same quiet sadness. The atmosphere in the churchyard at night feels heavy. Visitors often describe the same strange sensations: the sudden drop in temperature, the hairs rising on the back of the neck, the unmistakable feeling that someone is standing close, though the path is empty. Some hear soft footsteps pacing over gravel, keeping just behind them, but when they turn, there is no one there. Others speak of catching a glimpse of grey cloth at the edge of their vision, only to find nothing but empty air. From monks drifting through Abbey ruins to the Grey Lady in the churchyard, these streets still breathe with shadows of the past. But remember, just because this video is over doesn't mean the ghosts are gone. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more haunted, chilling tales. And tell me in the comments, would you dare to walk these streets alone at night? Until next time, good night.